we've got an interview that we conducted earlier with Professor Tudor Rickards, who we wanted to chat about what is going on with the leadership of this country.
Well, before we start, what a name. Is it slightly Dutch?
I have no idea. Well, Tudor obviously is Welsh, and the Rickards is assorted Richards and Rickards and so
on. Fantastic. Right, let's get straight to it. Brexit, the Tory government, and we're in a mess. How did we get here?
Well, that's what I've been trying to figure out for the last 6 years or so, from the very day of the referendum. And if you look at all the information that's flowed through the media since then, it's obviously an extremely complicated situation. And now there's 2 or 3 main sort of belief systems emerging. I mean, the one emerging system is that there's been a huge triumph for the UK because we've overcome the shackles of the EU, and we're now free to do our own things in the future, and we're being led forward by one of the people who was responsible for the success of the referendum on behalf of the Leave side. So that's the one theory that's to be found reading quite a large number of our national newspapers every morning. That's the theory. So the second theory is that the original referendum was itself phrased in such a way that it was difficult for people to know what they were voting for. The outcome became known as the will of the people, the will of the people being 52 against 48% of a small proportion of the country, of the electorate that voted. And after that, we've been waiting for an enormous, what I've called the Battle of Brexit, which is going on since the June of 2016, and culminating in if you remember, the bongs for Brexit in January the 31st of last year. So they're the 2 main theories. So who's correct? Who knows? You can argue that history is going to say which of these lines is going to be correct. But what we can then do is start analysing the information that we do have about particularly the decisions that are being made by the leaders of the various parties. So if we want to put the leaders under the microscope, obviously the starting point now would be Boris, and then go back and have a look at the leadership of Theresa May, and even looking at the leadership of David Cameron, who brought the election about the referendum about in the first place. So that's the sort of leadership playing field, if you like, we have to look at, and it's quite complicated.
My thoughts on it, I mean, just recently, I mean, we need to cover how we got here, but my thoughts are that Boris, when he took control, he kicked out people, I won't say people with half a brain cell, but kicked out so many people, brought his own people in, who was just nodding dogs, really. He was just agreed with him on Brexit. And now we're in a situation where, well, they're struggling, aren't they?
Well, there's certainly
that way?
Well, there's no doubt that there's been an enormous amount of talent that existed in the Conservative Party, and a lot of them gradually drifted away, some before Boris arrived, then afterwards when he didn't want anything to do with them. So in terms of wasting the capital that he might have been able to use in his cabinet, and there's no doubt that he's ended up with people who would normally be considered not really cabinet quality, and I would say not leadership quality. So he's made a bit of a rod for his own back, and it does look as if the main criterion for selection is utter acceptance of everything that Boris and indeed the people who influence Boris wants them to do. So if you go back, that links in with Cummins, of course, and so on.
That's another story. But it reminds me so much of Trump and his way of doing things, that he brings people around him who will just agree with him, and talent is a side issue.
No, that's right. And I mean, there's so many parallels with Trump. There are differences as well, but some of the parallels, the one you've picked out is a particularly clear one, that Trump can't stand anyone commenting in a way that goes against his prior beliefs. And so that really was, he's a lot more extreme than Boris, of course. But in that sense, I don't think Boris likes to hear bad news. And he certainly doesn't like to promote bad news, which isn't good for a leader, really. His part of the skill is being able to break bad news, not pretend it doesn't exist,
Yeah, and bring together a broad church of opinion as well to some workable direction.
That's right.
With regards to COVID and the coronavirus and the response of the government, we've been commenting on piecemeal issues such as when lockdowns should have started, when certain things should have been brought into play, the ridiculous situation heading into Christmas where it seemed that those few days of relaxation of the rules at Christmas were going to cost way too much in human lives. And do you feel that unfortunately we've got the wrong government in at the wrong time?
Well, it's a tricky one, that. I think that there's no doubt that the British electorate believes that any government would have struggled under these circumstances. So if you start looking at it through the eyes of the vaccines coming in, but before that, the virus, then it is a totally new environment. And I think a lot of slack that Boris is getting from the electorate is because people are saying, well, I don't think the other side would have made any difference really. Now, whether that's true or not, who knows? But I think that's what's going on. And it looks as if the polls that are coming back, even the Labour Party polls, are suggesting that the electorate's not swinging away from this government because of the way they've been handling the crisis. So at one political level, we have to say that they're not doing as badly as you might expect. There
were some polls that suggested that Labour had got a small percentage lead over the Conservatives, though, over the last couple of weeks. Do you agree maybe that if we had an election now, it would maybe be a hung parliament?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's it does look as if about 40% of the population are rather constantly sticking with the two, and it does look as if Starmer has gradually pulled up, and so the two seem to be running. And with the variation that you get with a single poll, it doesn't be making as much progress as they would have hoped, any more than they hoped the same thing would happen before the last election. If you remember, that they should have been far further ahead than they were. Now Corbyn got the blame for all that, and again, history's going to decide how this is all falling out. But that was the evidence, is that the Labour Party, or the opposition, if you like, was not making as much progress as should have been in terms of the evidence in front of people.
How do you think the media has reacted overall?
I'm sorry?
How do you think the media has reacted, whether it's newspaper or the TV reports, particularly the BBC, on this? Have they supported the government, do you think, or have they done the job and supposed to be independent?
That's a nice one for me to hit over the boundary. Yeah. I mean, the British mainstream media, by and large, is so committed to the Conservative Party, or at least to the Conservative Party, let's say, that it's always going to dominate the press. So that's the first disappointment, is that if you wanted to have fair information portrayed to the public, then don't just rely on the mainstream media. But then you come to the BBC, which is the second part of your question. Now, I must admit, the news I get has been dominated by the BBC for many years. I was brought up with the BBC, and I believed them, and by and large, I thought it was the sort of information that was true, and so on and so forth. Now, it does seem that over the last 10 years, the BBC itself has been under pressure from forces that are suggesting if you're not careful, you're going to lose your license fee, and who knows, people would like to see us move towards an American system where you've got a state broadcaster is something that's just far too socialist, and there are pressures to even get rid of the BBC. So arguably, there are forces that are making the BBC a bit tentative, to put it mildly, in terms of the way they treat the news, and particularly the political news.
What I found is there's what I always refer to as, and people refer to as, the false equivalency, where back in the early 70s, you wouldn't be interviewing an astronaut or someone from NASA and also have somebody that that denied it ever happened and thought it was a conspiracy on there. Whereas now we're taking established scientific facts and we're giving airtime sometimes to people that I feel don't deserve airtime. Their view is not valid.
No, I think that's right. And then you can link in what a lot of people now are deciding that the way to get the news is through the internet and the social networks and so on. And so at least there's another set of beliefs being expressed. But of course, you've got the same problem now, and so Facebook is now in the problem of do we have any right or should we monitor anything that's going out on Facebook? And that's become itself a battle of what can be presented and what can't be. Is it okay to have equal space for people who believe that the vaccine is a myth? Because that's what's happening.
Yeah, that's what I firmly believe, that there needs to be censorship on certain parts of this, and it's a thin end of the wedge, because the minute you start to censor certain aspects of free speech, you open a door that somebody can use in a sinister manner, don't you?
Well, I tried, and it's by and large, it seems to me, the arguments are easier to present if you present these sort of views. The idea of a conspiracy theory is now becoming quite important. How do we identify a conspiracy theory? And you're talking about America, the conspiracy theories over there about why Trump has actually won the election. It's just a simple recent example why Trump has won the election. But then to believe that the opposition have actually got a series of pizza parlors that are open to the gratification to the politicians, and people, well, they act as if they believe it. That's all you can, as far as you can go, I suppose.
The problem is they seem so far-fetched that the fact that such a large section of the population believe it is terrifying. That they believe that Tom Hanks is in charge of a paedophile ring with no evidence whatsoever is quite astonishing to me. Well, I don't understand from day to day what this party is. I mean, I understood when there was the switch to the new right under Thatcher. It made sense. They were hijacking liberal policies and free market policies and going with Hayek and moving away from Keynesianism, and I understood that. And this they don't sit. 1 minute you have Boris and he's trying to come across as a reasonable one nation conservative, a caring, compassionate conservative, and then the next minute he's wanting to throw open the economy despite the coronavirus, because he seems to be putting a big emphasis on the economy, which brings you right back to Thatcherism. I mean, what is this new Conservative Party? What are its politics?
Well, the pieces that are being written about the new Conservatives suggest that they would like to, I mean, in a way, the Conservatives are everything except the idea of progressive. So you could call them the non-progressive party. Now, the non-progressive people are writing the leaflets and so on that are suggesting what they would like is to have the traditional old-fashioned, rather you call them the one-party Conservative Party, one party, so that it's almost the Victorian idea of the patrician class that are looking after the people on behalf of themselves, because they're not able to rule themselves. Yeah. So you've got the old-fashioned classic conservatism coming through. And I can't remember the paper now, but there was one written by some of the people still in the cabinet some years ago about it that espoused these views, and really they were very, very and I suppose Jacob Rees-Mogg type views rather than this century, or I should say last century views, really.
Before you go, though, you've got a book coming out.
I have, yes.
Tell us about it.
Well, it started, I suppose, when I retired from academic life, at the University of Manchester. I've written books, textbooks and things all my life, and I thought I'd try my hand at self-publishing.
Oh yeah.
And I was always connected with things to do with creativity, so I thought I'd write crime thrillers as well. So I started writing and self-publishing crime thrillers, which I've written a few, and then I got a taste of going back to writing some political work. So I started work with the referendum, and I thought I'd follow through what would happen. So as of the 23rd of June in 2000 and whenever it was 16, I started looking at the newspapers and writing what was happening every day. So I kept a diary every day, or a research notebook really. And then from that research notebook, I've produced a book with the spectacular title, Boris, Me and the BBC. I go to a bookshop until the lockdown, about twice a week, and talk with the owners. And so they've been showing me what sells and what doesn't sell and in their bookshelves. So I'm going to try it out first with my favourite bookshop and see if they will tell me which shelf to put it on even. I don't even know which shelf it should go on at the moment. But
well,
we'll see what happens.
When you go in the shop, if it's not at the front, move it.
Yeah, that's
what I believe is happening. That's what the sort of things the guys do, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, it's got to be done.
Tudor, thank you so much. We'll speak to you soon, and all the best to you and for the sales of the book. Take care.
Good. Well, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
And good luck on your programme.
Thank you.
What a lovely guy. Lovely guy. I like him.
Yeah. He knows his stuff. I can
stuff.
talk about political history and he doesn't fall asleep.
No.
I like that.
No.
Thank you for watching. I'm impressed. You've passed the IQ test and got this far, so let's press that button to do the last thing that helps us. It's got subscribe on it, you can't miss it, and please ring the bell for notifications of future videos.